Hello and welcome Truck Stop Murder True Crime Podcast, the Monday Murder edition. Until I start getting more listeners, I'm gonna try to keep it on. I'm gonna keep it on the same platform. Maybe I'll make it a separate episode. But for now, it's all gonna be under Truck Stop Murder True Crime Podcast. If you're a new listener, what this is Monday Murder has to do with anybody who was convicted of capital murder with aggravating circumstances, who got the death penalty, where I'll cover their case, last words, and last meals. So I used to do this before with three of them, but I think I'm going to just do it once so I get more in depth on it. No truck stops on here. So also an update on Virgil from last Monday. He got a stay of execution because of the whole coronavirus thing, where the state had to give him 6 months to build up a leniency for the death penalty before they set a date for execution. But without further ado, but before I start, let's give out my first Patreon episode, my first Patreon. If you want to be a Patreon, go to Patreon Truck Stop Murder. You could become one just like Full Metal Jackalope. Yep, everybody's happy. I'm happy. So yeah, anything will start off at $1 to $10. Just go to Patreon for Truck Stop Murder True Crime Podcast or Truck Stop Murder. Patreon Truck Stop Murder. You could be one. But without enough of that, all the side notes out of the way, let's talk about Gary Gilmore, or should I say Gary Mark Gilmore. He was the first person executed when they reinstated the death penalty in 1976. They ended it in 72 and then reinstated it back in 76 because they said it was against constitution, unreasonable, that cruel and unusual punishment. But I guess they figured out a different way to do it in '76. But this was the first person who received the death penalty in Utah. So let's talk a little bit about Gary Gilmore. Gary Gilmore was born in Waco, Texas, given the name Faye Robert by his father, but his mother was not having that. She changed that to Gary right after they moved out of Texas. The second of four sons born to Frank and Bessie Gilmore, his parents drifted around the western United States while he and his brother grew while he and his brother grew up. His father earned a living by selling advertisement spaces in magazines, which did not exist. So he was a con man, just taking money. Since he drifted all over the place, by the time they realized they got ripped off, he was already gone. Gary was raised in a dysfunctional family and had a horrible relationship with his father. Gary's brother, Mikkel, described his father as a cruel and unreasonable man. Frank Gilmore's mother claimed that Gary was a legitimate son of magician Harry Houdini, if you believe that or not, who rejected Gary as a son. Mikkel has said that he believes the story is not true. However, the problem was his father did believe it. The Gilmore family settled in Portland, Oregon in 1952, where Gary began getting into trouble with the law as a teenager, with offenses ranging from shoplifting, car theft, assault, and battery. Although Gary Gilmore had IQ of 133 and with high scores, and was both scholastic academic tests, so he was doing really good in school. He dropped out of school at the age of 14, where he ran away from home with a few friends to Texas to see where his birthplace was. Returned to Portland after several months. So back at home, by the age of 14, Gary Gilmore started a small car theft ring with his friends, resulting in his first arrest. Plus, he was released to his father with a warning. And this was something that his father would continue to get him out of trouble. And then in 1958 was charged with statutory rape, but of course Daddy got him off of that as well. Later on, the girl would give birth to, after he was, later incarcerated, give birth to the child, but his parents told him that the child had died, and Gary will never know whatever happened. He never knew he had a child. So 2 weeks later, he was back in court on another car theft charge of a past warrant on that. The court ordered him at age 14 to Oregon's McLaren Reform School for Boys, from which he was released the following year. He was sent to Oregon State Correctional Institution on another car theft charge in 1960 and was released a year later. In 1962, Gilmore was arrested and sent to the Oregon State Penitentiary for armed robbery and assault. He faced assault and armed robbery charges again in 1964 and was given a 15-year prison sentence as a habitual offender. He was granted conditional release in 1962 to live in a halfway house in Eugene, Oregon, on weekdays, and study art at a community college because he had won a like a art like a art contest. So because they saw what he had to offer in the art world, they decided let's give this guy parole, and, release him for a while to go to this art college. But Gary Gilmore never registered, and within a month he was arrested and convicted for armed robbery due to his violent behavior in prison. He was transferred to Oregon to a maximum security federal prison from Oregon to a maximum federal prison in Marion, Illinois in 1975, where when I first found this case, that is where I was at. I mean, when I first decided to do this format of the Monday Murder, instead of just Monday Murder or Meal, I said Monday Murder, where I was at a truck stop not too far from there, which is not too far. Actually, we're Marion. Yeah, it's not too far from the another case I'm going to do. But I'm going. If you want to know, just that'll be my 100th episode. I would say it's the Dardine family and everything around that. That's my. I'm going to tell you right now. Is what's his game? I can't even think. Is Tommy Linsells. I'm sorry, my mind went blank for a second there. But yeah, the Dardine family and the time, everything around that case. That'll be my 100th episode. So I'm going to let you know right now. So back to Mr. Gilmore here. He was conditionally paroled in April 1976 and went to Provo, Utah to live with a distant cousin who tried to help him find work. Gilmore worked briefly at his uncle Vern's D'Amica's shoe store, where being a lot of time in jail, he did not really adapt to that. I saw interviews with his uncle where he would openly whistle and harass the women, and where his uncle would be like, "You can't do that. It's okay if you look, then go about your business. Don't follow through with your urges." So, but he soon returned. Other than that, he also soon returned to his previous lifestyle, stealing items from stores, drinking, and getting into fights. Gilmore, this is where he met Nicole. Nicole Baker, a 19-year-old widow and divorcee with 2 children, which was at first casual, but soon became intense. And Gilmore's aggressive, because of Gilmore's aggressive behavior, and Nicole's, they moved in together. But because I give him Gilmore's aggressive behavior, because he was still in Nicole's family, pressure to break off the relationship between them all, and a variety of reasons, accused their age differences and Gilmore's unpredictable behavior. They and love of beer and weed, and again started shoplifting, went back to his own ways, to include this time stealing guns. And one day he came home with a bag full of guns, and Nicole just had enough. So after 2 months, she left him. And he did try to find her, but he could not find her nowhere. So, and this really started him off. This, I think, was the lit the fuse of the stick of dynamite that put him in death row. And that's why we're talking about him, because of this. So that day was on Monday, July 19th, 1976. Max Jensen went to work as usual at the self-service gas station in Orem, Utah, after Gary had a spat with his girlfriend, and she told him she was leaving him. So he left and went driving. Around 10:30 p.m., he went into the Sinclair service station. He spotted an attendant and quickly saw that no one else was around. He walked up to Max Jensen and pulled out a .22 Browning automatic. He instructed Jensen to empty out his pockets, which the young Mormon quickly did. Then he told Jensen to go into the bathroom and lie down on the floor with his arms under his body. Then Jensen got into the position. He was obeying everything that Gilmore said. Then inexplicably, Gilmore put the gun close to Jensen's head. He said, "This one is for me," he said, and fired. Then he placed the muzzle right against his skull, shot him once again. This time is for Nicole. So let's look a little history of Max David Jensen. His name is Max David Jensen. He was born April 20th, 1951 in Montpelier, Bear Lake County, Idaho. He was born in Idaho. Montpelier, Montpelier, in Idaho. Of course, he's buried in his death. He happened right. That's where he is actually buried at in Water Wadboro Cemetery. There in Wadboro, Idaho. His wife was Colleen Halling, and provided. So he graduated from from Utah State University. He was a freshman law student at Brigham Young University. His wife, he had a 11-month-old daughter at the time. His wife Colleen, and he was actually only working part time there, probably trying to, maybe for college, trying to raise money for college. I'll post his picture if you want to see it on my social media accounts. But yeah, so he just started his life with his new family, and this guy entered the store and ended it for him. Now his wife is still surviving, and I don't have this 11-month-old kid, so this happened in '76. So she's adult right now, probably with kids of her own that don't have a grandfather because of this guy Gary. That night he spent the night in a motel, and then the following night he walked into the City Motel in Provo, not far from Brigham Young University. He confronted Lieutenant Ben Bushnell, who lived on the premises with his wife and baby. His wife named Debbie. I couldn't find the baby's name. Gilmore told Ben to give him the cash box and get down on the floor. Then, sounds familiar a little bit here? Then he shot Bushnell in the head, but he didn't say the whole statements he did on, with Jensen. Shot him in the head. Bushnell's wife came in, so Gilmore grabbed the cash box and left, trying to dispose of the gun in a nearby bush. Gilmore shot himself in the hand, leaving a trail of blood from the gun to the service garage where he had left his truck to be repaired shortly before the murder of Bushnell. The garage owner, seeing the blood and hearing on the police scanner of the shooting at the nearby motel, wrote down Gilmore's license number and called the police. Gilmore's cousin Brenda, the one he was living with, turned him into the police shortly thereafter, after he placed a phone call to her asking for bandages and painkillers for the injury to his hand. Gilmore gave up without a fight as he was trying to drive out of Provo. He was charged with the murders of both men. Solus Benny Jewkes, Jewkes, Jekis Bushnell. He was born May 30th, 1950, in Lawndale, in Los Angeles County, California. And of course, July 20th, 1976, he lost his life. He had a wife, Debbie, and I don't know the name of the child, but it was a baby, just like. So 2 days in a row, 19th to 20th, this guy, Gary Gilmore, left two widows, two babies, children who will not have a father. And there you have it. So let's talk about Benny J. Bushnell. Provo, Utah, was 25-year-old manager of the city center motel and lived on the premises with his wife, like I said, Debbie and baby. And this is on Find the Grave, on July 20th, 1976, Mark Gilmore carried a gun into the motel and demanded the cash. So the rest of on here is pretty much the same thing that I just mentioned. His father, Charles Albert Bushnell, died in 1980, and so did his wife, his mother, Delma. Both died in 1980. But yeah, if you want to pay the respects to him, he's at the Rose Hill Memorial Park in Los Angeles County. So Rose Hill Cemetery, Whittier, Whittier, in Los Angeles County. And both members are on Find a Grave, if you want to look these two individuals up. So yep, there he is, facing double murder, 1976 in Utah. So of course they're going to death because of the depravity of the case. So they went for the death penalty on both cases, just in time for the death penalty come back in the United States. So after the court, everything that happened in the trial, the jury returned to consider the verdict. Should we do this guy? And by midday they returned. Okay, at 10:30 a.m. the jury retired to consider the verdict. By midday they returned with a guilty verdict. Later that day, right afterwards, they didn't wait for the punishment phase. The jury also unanimously recommended the death penalty because of the special circumstances to the crime at the time. Utah had two methods of execution at the time: firing squad, and hanging. So Judge Bullock allowed Gilmore to choose which way you want to die, meet your maker. Gilmore replied, "I prefer to be shot." So the execution was set on Monday, November 15th, which is my birthday. So at the time, while he's getting condemned to death, I am in 76. So yeah, no, I was 6 years old, enjoying my sixth birthday. Utah was the only state union offering death penalty by firing squad at the time. So in 1976, during this time, the whole time he accepted his death penalty. I guess, I listened to an interview from him. I guess he realized what he did. He learned that these people were not just workers at these gas stations; that they had a family, they had children, and what he did. So he accepted the fact that if he killed them, that he should be punished. The law states that the judge gave him death penalty, so he should die. At this time, his old girlfriend, Nicole, they made amends together, and I guess she felt bad for him as well. So he talked her into committing, doing a double suicide attempt with them both. So she was able to smuggle some barbiturates in. I don't know. I've heard rumors that, heard something, not rumors, but I read in a lot of places where she had put them in a balloon and stuck them in her vagina and stuck them in. So it's definitely not different now. Death row, which I'm gonna say last episode I stated that I'm just waiting on my background check where I will be working at the Blinsky unit soon. So no more truck driving for me. I will be working there. But yeah, I have my wife's uncle was on death row. So one of these cases I'll cover soon. And you have no contact. So I guess in 76 you did have contact. I guess Utah as well. She was able to smuggle him into him, and at a designated time they both took him. Well, it was unsuccessful. Both of them lived. She ended up being in a coma for a while and regained from that. And of course, the only thing this did was he thought that the suicide would be successful, but all it did was prolong his execution. It was still going to happen. So in November 19th, like I said, during a board of pardons hearings, Gilmore said, this is what he said: they always want to get in on the act. I don't think they ever really done anything effective in their lives. I would like them all, including the groups of reverends and rabbis from Salt Lake City, to butt out. This is my life. This is my death. It's been sanctioned by the courts that I die, and I accept that. And he wanted to die. Gilmore received several stays of execution brought about by the efforts of the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU. He told them to butt out as well. The last which occurred just hours before his rescheduled execution date of January 17th. This day was overturned at 7:30 a.m. on the morning of the 17th, and execution was allowed to proceed as planned. During the time, Gilmore, also his mom, who was trying to save his life, tried to give appeals and give him life in jail without parole, but he was not having it. He told her to butt out too. This is me. You need to stay out. I've done wrong. The courts decided that it was wrong, and they decided that I should be put to death, and I accept that. In one of his interviews, he actually even said something about that. He goes, "It's crazy how the United States wants to bring back the death penalty, and they want to give the death penalty, but when the death penalty is on, it's time to do the execution, they're like, well, wait a second, they don't want to do it. They don't want to have their hands dirty." I'm guessing what he was insinuating. So during the time of Gilmore was on death row awaiting his execution. Of course, he attempted twice. The first time, like I said, was November 16th, which lasted him while incarcerated. Gilmore also, during this time, he actually gathered up a bunch of his medication. I guess they weren't, even after the first suicide attempt, he was able to gather up a bunch of medication and he wanted, go out on his own terms. He wanted to die, but on his own terms. Also, because they were dragging it out, so he's trying to speed up the process. And of course, he really disliked, he was in jail with actually the Hi-Fi murderers. And Pierre Dale, rapist, Pierre Dale Sheldon, and William Andrews, he did not like them at all. So, after all the appeals, the execution day comes up. So, on January 17th, 1977, at 8:07, the night before Gilmore had requested an all-night gathering of friends and family at the prison mess hall on the evening before his execution. Of course, again, like I said, 77, this was a lot different. There is no contact now with death row inmates. He was served the last meal. What he requested was steak. I wonder what kind of steak it was. Steak, potatoes, milk, and coffee, which he consumed only the milk and coffee. So I guess his Uncle Vern probably ate the steak, and with a trade-in which he attended, which who also claimed the gathering, which he secretly smuggled in. Like I said, totally different than what it was now. Maybe they used to have the facilities too. I don't know, separating, but they're all in the same room, where he gave them three small 1 ounce bottles of Jack Daniels, where he smuggled into his jacket, and of course he's like, I need that, and quickly consumed them. He was then taken to an abandoned cannery behind the prison, which served as the prison's death house. He was strapped to a chair with a wall of sandbags placed behind him to absorb the bullets. 5 gunmen, local police officers they were, stood concealed behind a curtain with 5 small holes cut in them to place their rifles through, and were aimed at him. After being asked if you have any last words, all he could say is, "Let's do it." I can think it's Tone Low. Let's do it. The funky. I think it's Tone Low. There's a funky Cole Medina. But yeah, so the Reverend Thomas Mersman, the Catholic prison chaplain, gave Gilmore his last rites. After the physician cloaked him, they put the prison physician cloaked him with a black hood. Gilmore uttered his last words again to the father, and they shot him. Now the execution happened. He finally got what he wanted, and he was pronounced dead not too long right after that. So of course, there's all kinds of media about this, all movies, TV shows, and whatnot, because it was the death row, and he begged so much to get murdered. So Gilmore's story is documented in Norman Mailer's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, The Executor Song, in 1979, which was adapted by Mailer for the 1982 television movie of the same name, starring Tommy Lee Jones as Gilmore. Because Jones won an Emmy Award for his portrayal of Gilmore. Gilmore's brother, Memoirs Shot in the Heart, was made into an HBO movie. Starred Giovanni Ribisi, Elias Koteas, and Sam Shepard. On December 11th, 1976, episode of NBC Saturday Night Live featured guest host Candice Bergen, and I've been looking for this. I really want to hear the actual version, but it was took off. And the cast sing Christmas thing melody entitled "Let's Kill Gary Gilmore for Christmas." Dressed in winter attire and surrounded by fake snow, the performers sang the melody of the familiar Christmas carols, which altered lyrics. Among its memorable lyrics are set to Winter Wonderland. In the meadow, we could build a snowman, one with Gary Gilmore back inside. We'll ask him, "Are you dead?" He'll say, "No, man," but we'll wait for the frostbite till he dies. That's amazing. I wasn't going to sing it to you, but I guess I kind of did. Later in TV season, and Gilmore's death, by his death, NBC reran the episode, but the network removed the musical sequence. In place of NBC inserted a brief Christmas-oriented film at an airport about people meeting friends and relatives after this barking from airplanes. So the Oakland-based performance artist Monty Kazaza, K-A-C-A-Z, Kazaza, let me start again, Cazazza, sent out photos of himself in an electric chair on the day of Gilmore's execution. One of these mistakenly printed in a Hong Kong newspaper as the real execution. He was also photographed to Kazagai alongside transmissions throbbing, Gristle members, Genesis, just a bunch of crazy shit where he also Gary Gilmore's postcards of all this. In 1977, the Verts had a top hit. The band Verts had a top 20 hit in UK with the song Gary Gilmore's Eyes. The lyrics describe an eye donor recipient realized that his own eyes came from the executed murderer. The song was later covered by the German punk rock band Die Tottenhausen. A country version of the song was recorded by Dean Slabowski, C-H-S-C-H-L-A, Bowski, yeah, that's probably right, Slabowski. On October 2nd, 1979, Sting's birthday, the Police released the album Regatta de Blanc, which featured a track titled Bring on the Night. This ballad, which displays Andy Summers' surreal and spacious about his guitar talents. in Ode to Gary Gilmore's Ultimate Death Wish. Gilmore is also the main character and artist Matthew Barney's Cremester, Cremaster 2, the second part of it, Cremaster Cycle, a series of 5 films dealing with surreal and controversial topics and themes. In 1980, the Judy's on the Wonderful World of Appliance album released the song How's Gary? So some more songs. Season 2, Episode 3 of Seinfeld that aired on February 6, 1991 originally had a reference to Gary Gilmore's line of Let's Do It until the scene was changed during the final shot. Then also on Roseanne on Season 8, Episode 23, The Wedding that aired on May 7th, 1986, Roseanne's daughter Darlene says to her just before her wedding, well, in the words of Gary Gilmore, let's do it. And lastly, in Christmas Story's play Beyond Therapy, 1950 character Bruce claims that he wanted to see Gary Gilmore's execution on public television. So, yep, everybody from Saturday Night Live to Roseanne and everybody definitely he was definitely the talk of the time. Like I said, the execution had ended on started back up in 1976, and he did really beg to be executed. So there you go. So the notes of this all. Let's have a rundown, shall we? His father was Frank Gilmore, a professional con. Mother Bessie, or was his father Houdini? I'm afraid I'm not going. Brothers, they're all still alive. He dropped out at age 14. Car theft in 55. Armed robbery in 62. Assault in Oregon in 62. Armed robbery in Oregon 64. Armed robbery in Oregon at 72. And then in 1976, in July 19th and 20th, he committed murder. Tried as suicide on November 16th. And another time, I don't have that date, but twice while he was in prison, he committed suicide. But the November 16th was his girlfriend. So on January 17th, 1977, he was executed by, I'm going to keep calling it murdered or killed. He was executed. I guess that's the proper word for it. Either way, any three will work. He executed, murdered by the state, killed by the state. Either way, he is dead for his acts. And he was. All right, then. Well, there you have it. There's my second episode of Monday Murder. If you like it, please rate and review anywhere you listen to these podcasts. I also have my YouTube channel, Trucks.Murder and True Crime Podcast, or Trucks.Murder. You can email me at trucks.murder@gmail.com. Please join my Facebook group, Trucks.Murder and True Crime. Follow me on Twitter at TruckMurder. Basically, just Google Trucks.Murder and True Crime Podcast and hope you'll find it. But I'm really trying to get my social media group, Trucks.Murder True Crime, up so people can start. It's really quiet. I feel like I'm the only one talking. I want some conversation going on there. Talk about your journeys. Talk about, if you're a truck driver, I would love to hear from you. But like I said earlier in the episode, I also said it in the last episode, I am waiting for my background check. I do like truck driving, and my wife thinks that I'd be a phony if I continue doing truck stop murder. But all the truck stops I do cover are ones I have been to. I've driven over the road for 7+ years, and I have been all over the 48 states. So I have been to these trucks. But 9 years in the Army, and then 7 years as a truck driver, I'm ready to be home. So I'll be a correctional officer at the Polinsky unit on death row in Texas. So just imagine, it gives me more time. I'll be 4 on, 4 off, so it gives me more time with my family and more time so I could dedicate to this podcast. So hopefully I can get you more episode and more consistent if you do like this. So again, also, if you want to sponsor me or support me, you can PayPal me at gary.howard5@yahoo.com or trucks.murder@gmail.com. Or like Full Metal Jackalope, you could become a Patreon at $1. You get a big shout out like she did. At $5, I'm gonna start doing some bonus episodes and a shout out. $10, you get a cup made by Mrs. Kruger. Mrs. Kruger herself, a little travel mug with her name on it. Now I haven't posted up yet, but I think I'm gonna put a $20 tier on it, where you get to join me for an episode, if that's what you would like, for one episode, and you pick the case. Just tell me what it is. I'll research it and we'll set up a date. And there you have it. Also, thank you for listening. And like I always say, you can't fix stupid, but you sure numb it with a 2x4. I'm out of here.